Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to get started. It is 1 minute after 4. And as everyone knows by now, the recording is on if you didn't hear it. So just remember that, and we will speak loudly. Kathy Speaker McNett is unable to be with us today because of a deposition. And we have not heard from Carla, but we are assuming that something must have come up in her business world as well. And we have Mark Ryan via Zoom. Hi, Mark. So welcome, everyone. This is the August 31st, 2022 meeting of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority for Harrisburg. We would like to approve the minutes as the next item on the agenda. And I hope everyone has had a chance to review the July 20th, 2022 minutes that Jeffrey pulled together. And if you have,
I'll make that motion.
I'll
second.
Great. Any other discussion about it? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So the unofficial end of summer is here as we sit nearly at the eve of Labor Day weekend. And unfortunately, summer can also be the time where things slip away from us. We were going to discuss enacting and adopting some FY23 goals for the ICA, but I neglected to follow up. Oops. My apologies to my colleagues, and just know that I will be in touch and we will get it together before our September meeting so that we can discuss them and hopefully adopt them and put something down in writing. Next on our agenda, moving through very quickly. On August 4th, we received the city's updated 5-year financial plan. We are very grateful for the work that the finance team under the leadership of Marita Kelly dedicated to this effort. It is a wonderful work of art. On August 11th, we received a letter from Charlie DeBrunner, the controller, who said he agreed with all the historical data presented in the report, along with the assumptions contained in the revenue and expenditure projections. All of us were delighted to see the city's intention to pay off all of the AMBAC debt this year, as well as making the final payment on a series DNF bonds. That is huge for the city, Marita. And I know it's something you have always thought was necessary. I know that Charlie agrees with you wholeheartedly. So I think we're all excited that this, I'm going to say, will become an eventuality, not usually could. So we spent the last 3-4 weeks taking a look at the document, and it is well constructed, follows the former guideline very slowly or very similarly to what we have seen in the past. I think there may be encouragement in the future to have Marita break out and really make it what she feels comfortable making. And I had asked that all of us send our opinions, questions, criticisms, accolades to Jeffrey, who compiled them. And in looking at them, and there are quite a few, and they're in different areas, and several of us landed on the same issues. It seems to make more sense, I think, and I'd like to ask my fellow board members to consider, can we offer the city a 14-day window within which to address as many of these issues as possible to result in an updated submission of the 5-year financial plan? And that would then require them to give us a resubmission by September 20th, pegging it off our response date, which would have been on Tuesday as the starting date. I think it will be more seamless than certainly trying to capture things in writing. And it allows Marita to really goes straight to the source. So I have two colleagues here. Your thoughts?
I think that makes sense. I know the comments that I submitted had some substantive, some technical and editorial, and to try to sift through all of that and respond in, this afternoon session doesn't seem to me to be practical, when in fact the relationship that's developed with the city and the nature of the comments that I think I've seen from some of the others, makes sense to have the staff sit down together and come back with a draft. It shouldn't be that difficult a process.
I concur. I would just add on my end. But when I reviewed, I had a couple of questions that I thought were related to formatting. One of them was related to ARPA, and thought it would be good to at least get a thoughtful consideration of whether ARPA should be listed in the plan as included in the spending as sources and uses. That way, when the city council and the mayor ultimately settle on the ARPA spending, within the plan, there is a line item that carries it and allows the spending to conform with the plan. It's there in the narrative, but I think it would be good for a placeholder line so the city doesn't have to come back, for technical reasons to adopt a variation of the plan. So I had that and another similar formatting comment that I think would be good to cover those now, so they don't have to open this up again in 3 months.
But we don't have the ARPA. We just have a proposal. There's nothing in writing at all. Nothing approved, nothing, other than those 3 items. The 5.5 for the HVAC, the police bonus, and there's another small. Those are the only 3 that we have a source and use. The rest of it has to go before city council, which will not go before city council until October. So I don't know, other than what the mayor has proposed as suggested items for ARPA, we don't, we would only have potential uses, but we don't know. Well, we know the sources, the revenue, but nothing is committed except for those 3 small items.
Understood. And I think we're probably talking about the same thing. And I think just putting it in the plan, even as a proposed use and having it approved now, just eliminates, I think, a bureaucratic step that otherwise would definitely have to take place and go from have to might have to.
Oh, okay.
I think it would be good for us to just check off that box, having this sort of approved. And ultimately, the spending of it's really going to be discretionary by the city and not by the ICA anyway. So
Okay.
if you put on there agree, just as one suggestion could be proposal and priorities to be agreed upon by mayor and city council. I think at least from my 2 cents, I think that'd be something I would consider as within the spirit of the act and would, again, remove the necessity of the ICA having to vote on an amendment to the plan 3 months from now. Make it easier for you to spend the money. So that's just elaborating on something I think we could accomplish now. Check off the box.
It's just difficult for us to present it in a formatted manner when we don't, all we have is a proposal. So all we can present to you is a proposal.
And I think that's fine. I do think you have money that's being spent this year
Right.
that you could put in there, and it could be another line below the capital expenditures, just for historic purposes. If someone says, how did they get where did that 5.5 come from? It's in a
Well,
document.
that is approved. That portion is approved by
Right.
city council.
But I
Those
believe
3 items.
it's not in the plan at this point. I don't believe, unless I missed it. I mean, it just says that we have $47 million. So even
Oh,
that,
so you want that further explained? And-
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, maybe that occurred after, the vote occurred after the
Right.
submission, so I'm not sure.
and again,
But we can definitely do that for the pieces that were.
I don't want to speak for any of my colleagues, but I do think if you were even just to say, I know that the mayor put a priority and said the priority here is to assist with housing stuff.
Low income homes.
Low income. And you could put on there ARPA spending $40 million, 8 million housing stuff. And the specific priorities, I think, would be very much within the keeping of the plan. If you were to, seek final approval and then spend it. And showing in the plan as a line, as a placeholder, showing that the spending has been contemplated.
Well, we've been told by city council, the mayor was instructed that they do not want her to put a penny in any category until they consider how much will be spent and how much will be allocated. Like, we can put the categories, but we can't put what she suggests. Because they've already warned her that they want to be involved in that decision making, which makes sense.
Good
you know.
feedback. Then again, maybe the answer to that would be maybe to supplement it, maybe to make it a catch-all, ARPA spending, one line, $40 million.
Mhm.
And then in October, submit a supplemental report saying, here's what's been approved.
Yeah, we can definitely do that, assuming we can get,
And avoid having to amend, like I said, amend the plan 3
Yeah.
months after the job.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just, maybe you don't know some of the discussion.
That's great. That's why we're here.
Yeah, yeah,
We're not supposed to discuss this outside of sunshine anyway, so.
right, yeah. but
That's why we're here
yeah. And I don't think council's being negative. They just want their input and we want their input. We have public meetings with them. So of course we want input, but they have made it clear that there needs to be that balance where they help to make those final decisions.
And same thing, not to be argumentative, really, I mean, where I'm coming from is I want to make sure that there's nothing bureaucratic that takes place that prohibits the city from helping with the citizens with the funding, which that's the purpose of it, right? So,
Right.
so trying to be proactive and suggesting a step that we can take to help you get the money out the door faster.
Very good.
I just want to pick up a little bit on what something Doug said, and that is working together with the city. This is a whole new way of being able to move forward, unlike in the past. So as we sit here, we know that we can reasonably discuss with Marita why, wherefore, what we think would be better. And so that also, I think, gives us confidence to suggest that this might be the best route forward, rather than really complexify newer things with just a written document. And I think that all of us, Marita, and I've shared this with you, we're reading it somewhat naively and as the outside perspective. And so sometimes you who've been literally with it for 4 or 5, 6 weeks nonstop at this point, might not see what we see, the questions. It's like my husband accuses me of this in my writing all the time. You just went from A to D. You didn't stop at B and C. And so the reader doesn't understand why you did this. So those are some of the comments that come forward as well. So if we think this is good, I think it probably needs a motion. And then we'd send an official letter.
Yeah, to move the deadline to 20th.
Yeah, and that the agreement is that you and Marita will work together. And I stand ready to sit down as well, Marita, and I'm sure that both Doug and Ralph would be willing to answer questions as you go through and say, what did this mean?
Sure, I appreciate that. Yeah, because sometimes interpreting someone's request and really understanding it can be 2 different things. My husband might find that out too.
All right, any other marriage confessions? Okay, so I think we're there. Would one of the 2 gentlemen like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to extend the deadline to September 20th for our staff and city staff an opportunity to sit down and review comments and questions that have been submitted by the members of this board.
Can I have a second? Great. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And so we will then plan to discuss and take action on the plan at our September 28th meeting.
That should give you sufficient, excuse me for interrupting, that should provide sufficient time as a day that we made the corrections you had asked.
Yeah,
We'll start on Tuesday. We have our
Right.
first,
That's right.
we're discussing this on Tuesday.
We already
after
have
all.
our meeting set up. We're ready to roll.
We'll hit the ground running.
Yeah.
and then I think we'll work quickly in the meantime, in that 8-day period to review it. And I just think, given that we've we're just really asking for answers. It should be an easy read and check mark to see if we've gotten to where we need to be. And if you want to submit it earlier, that's fine too.
I don't think that's. We're buried without this.
And so the next item on the agenda, Marita, is anything that you might want to share with us regarding the city's finances.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. I think everyone receives a copy of the report we submit to Ms. Clay and Ms. Hutzel for the monthly report. And we try to share that with Jeff, and Jeff shares it with you. And the August 15th report was good news to us that our revenues are still coming in robustly, and we're very thrilled with that. And I mean, as compared to the COVID type of circumstance where we were at. So we've seen the EIT come in healthy. We've seen obviously real estate's nice and strong, and the only thing that's really killing us is the parking, and that's not going to get better. We anticipate for 2023 zero for leases, and for the prime parking, we will not receive that $2.5 million. So but we haven't received it for the last 3 years, so it's something we're planning on. But that being one issue with the parking, we have a very sound fund balance of $40 million. And we have received the state's allocation for police and fire services of $5 million. Now, I don't have all the offsets of everything that's happened since August 15th. We'll be sending that to the two young ladies very shortly. But for the most part, it looks like we have approximately $45 million in the general fund balance. So we're feeling pretty secure in that we have a sound fund balance. On September 15th, we will be making the final bond payment. And for the, I forget what series it's because I don't know the notes in front of me, but
Yeah.
yes, so that will put us in reasonably good shape, thankfully, after multiple decades of paying that down. And our solicitor, Mr. Grover, and I are hoping to sit down with AMBAC and of course Dan Hartman, sorry, and look at a potential option to pay off fully the AMBAC debt. So if we are fortunate enough to do that, then we have a pretty good opportunity to reach these fund balances that we're listing here on page 6, which are, fairly robust, if I will. Now this actually includes a potential borrowing of $15 million for next year, which would allow us to take care of all of the phase ones, which we have back here. Every one of the items in the phase 1 capital can be executed through the next, capital budgets don't happen all at once through the next 3 to 5 years. But that 15 million, and we do plan on a high interest rate because we're still not credit rated yet, but we're optimistic that we could potentially get a credit rating. I know you didn't want to dig deeply into
No,
this. I
that's
just
fine.
wanted to reference this one chart.
And
So-
and just as an aside, it's exactly that kind of information that I don't believe is in the document itself. We see the interest payments that you're anticipating making, but the narrative doesn't say we anticipate borrowing 15 million to cover.
Capital project.
Yeah, it's the number that's not in there. You do allude to the fact that you might want to go to the credit market. But so then you see the future interest payments, but you don't have a reference to what the loan is. So,
Well,
well, it's that sort of thing that you'll-
Mostly because we don't know. Without a credit rating, we're, up against the wall trying to make.
But you're
it.
planning something.
yeah,
It's a
I mean,
plan. It's
Well, I'd
not-
have to discuss that with Brian McCutcheon and see how he wants to present that and what he feels comfortable with, because they were just doing he and Bill were doing their kind of best estimate as to what an interest rate might be without the credit rating. But to be honest with you, we can't issue bonds if we wanted to. We will very unlikely be able to issue bonds in 2023 unless there's some type of resolution with the Act 47 circumstance. So some of it's pure conjecture, but yes, we can add the additional information based on what they had conjectured.
right.
I guess not probably the best term, estimated, in terms of the borrowing, but they really feel it's important that that the borrowing occurs. And it's almost certain that Brian had included that information.
I think
Maybe it's in
just
some
the
obscure place.
I think it's just the 15 million that's missing, so you don't know how much you were planning to borrow.
That's what I thought, that Brian had written something
Okay.
in
And I
there,
could be wrong.
but I could be wrong too, that.
Anyway, you
That was
guys
our
will work it out.
Right, of course, yes, not
Check mark
not to
it.
digress on things that need clarified, because I can't speak to them because I don't have this memorized. Even if I did have it memorized, it wouldn't be, entirely reliable. So the good news is, with or without a borrowing, we would be in excellent shape. Without the borrowing, we'll be even in better shape. But
Right.
the thing is, you can't continue to operate a city of this size without, we can't do pay as you go forever, but I'm guessing in 2023 that may end up being pay as you go unless we can find a workaround, as you know, with the legal component of Act 47 and the potential concerns. I don't want to get into the rest of it because I'm not a lawyer. But the good news is those borrowings are completely going away. We're in a much better place than we would have. If you look at our expenditures, how they drop,
Right,
because they're dropping by the exact amount of those payments, and 4 million of it would be interest payments, which is what Charlie is having the consternation with. Why pay the 4 million when we can pay the full amount off now and save the taxpayer dollars for this, the remaining history of that loan from AMBAC, so.
and I know Dan Miller is fully supportive of this because we've discussed it with him in the past. Do you foresee any issue with city council, or have you already gauged their support for this?
We have discussed it with the finance chair, Ms. Green, as early as yesterday. I've been trying to get an appointment with her, but there's been a
Well,
lot of-
summertime
Right.
too, yeah.
Well, summertime and some other schedule related issues, but we have discussed it with her. Of course, she was very pleased to hear.
Good.
If we can get that paid off, that would be a yeoman's job, and so we're very optimistic. But the long and the short of it is we're heading into the final quarter of 2022 and probably the best position the city has sat in 30 years. So, we're very grateful for your support, for helping us get to that location. Nadra and Beverly's support for helping us get to that location. And we are just fortunate that we have such a marvelous team with Act 47, ICA, Finance, the treasurer, the controller, the mayor, the council. I should say mayor, council, controller, so forth. But I think that cooperation has moved mountains, and it just proves that when you work together and you collaborate, you cooperate, and you show forth, hopefully, you're pleased, that there is a good, and none of this could be done without Brian McCutcheon.
Right.
So if anybody ever wants to give Brian McCutcheon some kudos, I'd appreciate it,
More
because
than kudos.
I will not take credit for what Brian has done, because he has moved mountains, probably worked every weekend since January. And,
Well,
and
he held it together all last year as well.
And he did, yeah, so there's plenty of opportunity to thank all the actors and to say, we hope to continue into 2023, some good and helpful financial patterns that kind of change the pathway that we've seen in the past and move us into a situation of stability and safety from a fiscal standpoint. That's all I have to say. So, said more than I should have.
Any questions?
Rita, can I just ask for you to just maybe share some comments? I know it's referenced in the plan regarding the target for fund balance. Could you talk, just maybe expand a little bit on what your thinking is there as far as like maintaining fund balance, what the policy is, and how that relates to paying off the potentially paying off the entire handback forbearance liability early?
Yeah, I mean, one of our concerns, I should say, Dan Hartman, who's my superior, who, by the way, has also done a very superior job. He's really come in and been a leader, and he can sit there and calculate these things in his head. And I'm like sitting there with a calculator, and I still can't get it done as fast as he can, you know. But the long and the short of it is, Dan was saying, if we don't continue to see the revenues continue to be healthy through the end of June and through the end of September, then the likelihood of making that back payment slips away a little bit. But now that we continue to see those revenues so robust, and we continue to see the expenditures being well managed by the mayor and her team, this permits us to sit down with Charlie DeBruder and say, you know, maybe you have something here. If, you know, because if we have 45 million and we pay down 20, that leaves us 25 million. That still leaves us in a reasonably good, healthy financial management position. It meets the criteria of which we've agreed to with GFOA of having at least 5%. And now it's, you know, we're hoping to up that number to 15% at some point, you know, because that's the new GFOA standard, because we adopted the old standard. This is the newer standard based on, you know, many hurdles with the last 5 years, you know. So I think that's very, very realistic, but, you know, there's a lot of hurdles that still have to be jumped in terms of, you know, what is AMBEC willing to accept, you know, what are we willing to pay, what is, you know, so there's those negotiations, you know, that you're a businessman. So there's a bunch of negotiations that we'll have to encounter, but the likelihood of it getting paid by December 31st of 2022 is probably about 85%. So that's pretty darn high, you know? So we're real ambitious and hopeful, because if we can save the taxpayers that $4 million in interest payments, that's going to be huge. And that's really, these people work hard for their money. We want to make sure they get a high return on their investment. This will help do that.
Thank you for the comment. Follow-up question. Do you know what kind of champagne you're going to open when you
Yeah,
get that
no,
payment?
Chandon. Sorry, that's the only one I drink. I'm a little bit elitist, and I mean, not terribly, but mildly elitist, and I like my Moet Chandon.
Hopefully there's champagne bottles popping all across the city.
That's
how
hope, yeah, that's our hope, yeah.
Can I switch topics and ask you about the Neighborhood Services Fund?
Sure.
So after our last meeting, I think it was like maybe the very next day, Marita sent us an updated report on the collections, and I was wondering if you could maybe discuss it, since we finally got a chance to get back together again, and just describe what your positives that you're seeing there and sort of the character of those positives.
Yes, and I had asked Brian, I sent him your email, I had asked him to respond, but honestly, with this new munis, he's the leader in implementing it, and he had to do the entire chart of accounts, no excuses, but it is an excuse. So I wasn't able to get that. In fact, I just texted him while I was here and said, if you could bring it by this afternoon, that'd be fine. Jeff was here when I did it, but he is floored. But anyway, the long and the short of it is, as much as the 3 additional communities have been somewhat of a taxing effort. By the way, we have a new director. Actually, he's a comeback like myself, Dave West, and he is just a sensation. So I think adding him to the team, and Austin, who is his number 2 at command, Austin will no longer, he will jump in that truck and collect trash faster than anybody, and he's the lead guy, second to the command. You know, so these 2 guys, they'll get in the garbage truck, they'll drive it, and they'll pick it up if they have people calling off. So we don't have any problem with collections. I mean, with physical collection of the trash. Now, obviously, we have some collection issues, but interestingly enough, the 3 boroughs are like leading the charge. They pay on time, they pay quickly, but the reason being is they can shut their water off. And we can't. So without, not to say I suggest we want to, but that's the reason why they're joining on the spot, because they don't want to have that risk, you know. So so that's been good in the sense that we don't have a huge burden and that they're not paying and that their costs are high. We only use 2 days a week to pick them up, Thursdays and Fridays. It fits into our schedule. So it's really not been as big of a burden. And no one's done a cost allocation. So I can guarantee you that we don't know the entire impact those 3 boroughs have on us. But it appears to be not the type of burden we thought it would be when we came in as a team. It seems to be good, healthy inflow of cash for that fund, you know, given those 3 additional boroughs. And since COVID, we've seen normal payments really pick up and some catch up. And so that's helped. Now we still have the issue. Now, one of the things that is a concern is how accurate is the report that we receive and we have, because even our solicitors saying, you know, some of those accounts have been resolved through tax sales through the county. So, you know, so those accounts that sit on there as payables are resolved because, so we ourselves have to work with Dan Miller, who's our treasurer, and help to really clean that report up so that you're getting more accurate information. That's what I've been told. I'm no expert on that report, but even our legal staff saying there's probably some cleanup that needs to happen that can give you more of an accurate report that really shows where we stand in the rears, you know. And as you know, one of the things the mayor would like to propose, but then there's some concerns about, you know, how that all plays out, is to help those that are in the rears that are low-to-mod or low-to-mod seniors who meet the federal requirements for low-to-mod. We would help pay the balance, and then that would come back to us. But there's some concerns as to how clean that all is. And I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to it. But it's one of the things we've kind of thrown around as an idea. You probably even saw it on the.
Yeah, and the ARPA.
Yeah, so the thing is, you really need to have good data for you as a professional businessman to be able to make the best analysis of that data. So one of the things we're hoping that we have a couple positions. We're hoping every time we fill a position, we're like, okay, great. But then they're like, okay, sorry, it took you too long to hire us. We're gone. So we lost 2 people that way already. Possibly could lose a third. I hope not. But so we're short staffed to begin with, and we just lost a 3rd person. So that really shortens our staff to even run a check run, which is this week. So there are things we need to do, but we're hoping maybe with Treasury and getting some cooperation, and maybe when Neil hires a lien attorney, which he has budgeted, but he can't hire me either, we could get better information, because that's where we're at. It's the information we have, they believe is not reliable. So, but the good news is that the income is definitely much healthier in terms of, you know, we're not in the behind rears as much as we were in the past. Can I show you that in paper? No. I can just tell you what Brian's telling me and what he sees when he gets reports from the Treasury. But we do hope that, and I know you're tired of hearing excuses, and I'm sorry to offer them, but I think there has to be a better way. And even the auditors are prompting us to get a better way to get better data. So in fairness to Boyer and Ritter, that's their job, you know. So So once we have better data, that make it more useful. Now, I know the county has pretty good records actually now with their tax sales. So we may be able to work with George Connors in the county to maybe get better data from them and say, we have, 100 arrears counts. Some of them were 15 years old. Have you settled them? And say they come back with reports that they, out of, 100, they settled 20 of them. Then at least we have a better perspective, but we only have 80 hanging out.
That'll help you with audit prep.
Oh, absolutely.
You still have, are you still contracting for outside support for audit prep
With my resource, yes, we are. But a lot, like today, I got an invoice from them. Some of it, it's the police pension plan we're doing offset. So the police pension plan is paying my resource, not us. So there's some things we pay my resource for, but some of it, the police pension stands alone, separate. I'm the chair of that board, so we do pay outside consultants for a bunch of things, and some of it is audit prep, but not all.
with all competing priorities, what do you think is, how realistic is it to get, your neighborhood services fund, your data verification, your reporting, how realistic is it to get through that by the end of the year and feel confident about it?
Yeah, it won't happen by the end of this year because I have to get those 2 positions filled in the county. And assuming I can get those filled and executed, and then there's a much higher probability. I did just, make some offers, but again, even making an offer is not a guarantee. The Commonwealth has the same issue. You make an offer, it takes them 15 days or, 30 days, 40 days to do a background check. And by the time the 40 days hit, the person's finding another job. There's so many, it's just a shortage of jobs. But yeah, not this year, but my goal is first quarter of next year is to sit with Dan Miller and see if we can get it better data. Because you can't have data that's so aged it's not reliable.
That said, I think just to keep for me to keep it in perspective, I think the fact that your current collections just for that current period was 98%. I think that gives you breathing room. My 2 cents would be that if it's a matter of cleaning up accounting and pursuing past due, you're talking about like reporting, which is important because it's for the public. So it's not that it's not important, but at least as far as like balancing your competing priorities go, I think your priorities would definitely be better focused on maintaining a high collections rate. And then as you get the resources to an adequate level where you can then go back to your reporting and provide clean reports to us and other interested parties, I think, for my 2 cents, I think you're probably prioritizing the way I would if I were up to me.
Well, the other thing is I can't prioritize by myself in this case because it's not just my report, it's the treasurer's as well. So, but he works very well with our Celia, his deputy treasurer, she's terrific. Ms. Dietz, she's terrific. That's her assistant. So they have worked well with us. Now they're short-staffed, they're desperately short-staffed. So we're hoping with this new budget and the new perspective that we can get up to full complement. It is starting to turn around, but it's a slow motion for HR to get people on board. But the good news is we've been able to hire trash haulers, a lot of them. So we're real happy. In the last 5-6 weeks, we've hired about 10. And 3 of them are haulers and 6 of them are motor vehicle operators. So that means Austin doesn't have to be driving the truck all the time.
What's the collections rate you experience over in your other day job?
About 99%. But
Sure.
we have the utilities, the hammer. And in our waterfall payments, electricity is the first to turn off for lack of payment. And that's really easy to turn off and on at the electric meter. So it motivates people to pay their, for example, their trash, which is like number 5 in the waterfall. So, it works, but it works, as Maria said, because you have a hammer. And one of the problems, it's tragic that you say that, but it's collections the way it is. And one of the reasons that Steelton or the other boroughs have the ability to do that. So it does make a difference to collections. And of course, it's only just to collect the money to cover the expenses, because just in case somebody's watching on YouTube, although I don't know if anybody watches our videos, the whole point is so that good customers who pay their utility bills on time aren't covering for the delinquencies. That's where it hurts. If you have a lot of delinquent customers, it's not like the city's covering it. It's not like some company is covering it. It's the other good customers of the city who are in theory making up for the shortfall so that there's enough revenue to operate the neighborhood services fund. So it's an imperative that everybody pull their proportional share to make sure that the neighborhood services fund or any utility operates, because they're not-for-profit municipal operations. And not about making money, they're about covering expenses.
I think it'd be great if we could continue to get the next quarterly, the second, I think this is only through first quarter. If we can available see second, that'll move to future or third quarter. And I think the issue is going to be, what does 98% collections mean? Is it bolstered by past due? Is it accounting? Is it simply getting caught up with county records and then recognizing it? I'm just curious, so kind of what is the quality of that 98% rate?
Right.
But we
That'd
did
be good to evaluate that.
to evaluate it. It looks like every quarter for the last 5 quarters, that rate was ticked. The collections rate has ticked up and up and up. So no matter what the quality is, it looks like on the business end of things, you're doing the right things, which is somewhere out of all that pool of past due and current collections, more is coming in than ever has in the past.
Yeah, so we're feeling really good about that. And Dave West, the new director, he has a keen mind for that too. So he's really keeping an eye on the revenue and, trying to balance his expenses. And now one of the reasons why he's been able to save is because he had so many vacancies for so long, but at least they were able to keep up with the collections. So the actual trash collection. So since we're talking about collections, I have to specify that. But yeah, so I think the mayor, in her wise judgment, has selected good quality folks who can really have an earnest desire to serve the people of Harrisburg. And that's the unique feature she has. She has a gift, so to speak. You're quite welcome. And I will keep on Brian to get the responses based on your questions. I hadn't ignored them the day I got to one sent them to Brian, but he's just totally overwhelmed.
Thank you for working with priorities.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you, Maureen. I appreciate that. And thank you for agreeing to work with Jeffrey. And next on the agenda, Jeffrey.
He and I worked together for years.
Yeah.
We've done it for a long time.
Yeah, so I think that's a win-win.
Absolutely.
That's a,
We'll make it so. Thank you. The board has in front of it the summary of bills paid report for August 31st. There were 7 fees. I apologize. One of them is a late fee that I tried to avoid, but when you're dealing with paying bills and our schedule of meetings, sometimes you just deadlines. So we did have to pay $30 of late fee, but I know we paid the late fee. The answer is we weren't delinquent. We just paid the fee. The starting balance for the authority was $110,988.26. Our ending balance for the period is $102,505.35. We have earned $16.25 in interest from FNB Bank. And I'm going to add that while we put in the request for the check from DCED, maybe it's been mailed, I don't know. We haven't got it yet. US Postal Service slows things down. But hopefully it's, if you could look into it for us. I know that the paperwork was submitted for our year 5 allocation. And so any moment now it'll probably show up, and that'll be terrific. And that will obviously boost our cash balance going forward. So if there's any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll proceed.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Any other business that my colleagues would like to raise? If not, I will turn it over to Jeffrey to lead the public comment.
We do have some members of the public with us today. I'm not sure if they've brought any queries for us, but the floor is open.
Why don't we do this? Because Brian, my intern, has questions. I just had some
Sure.
observations. I made copies of our right to know request for the
Okay.
members of the board that
Yeah.
you guys as well. We have reviewed plan. So let me just say this. But Brian, I think you had two specific questions.
Brian, can you give us your last name? We're not familiar with
KI. He will
Thank
not
you,
be
Brian.
bringing that happen
Appreciate
next week.
it. Appreciate that, Brian.
I said, I was looking at the 5-year plan.
Okay.
Why, especially considering why this is created, why is the a full debt repayment like the number one or guaranteed priority, considering not just the interest,
Sure.
but also you talked about you don't have a credit rating, you might want to have, I think, a $15 million.
Our future.
And then considering just why it was created in the first place, really a very conservative policy makes sense. Because also some of your projections are based on sort of this continuing. And if you look at sort of the economic situation, I think interest rates are going to go up a lot. Sure. There should be a slowdown, certainly.
So Brian, I'll give you the background, but then I'll turn it over to Marita to make some comments. The debt that we're talking about was debt that, it's not ICA's debt, it's
Right.
the city's debt. Just to make that clear, and the city incurred that debt during the financial crisis that the city had several years ago. There was an agreement made with a company called AMBAC to
They're
stabilize.
bond insurers.
Or bond insurance. It's actually not like the people who lend you money, it's the people who insure a bond. And the city, and this was many years ago, and it's not the current administration, but a previous administration basically defaulted on their existing obligation to pay back money they borrowed. And so there was a reorganization of the debts of the city of Harrisburg at that time to put it all in one bucket and make sure that the city can continue to function. And the city, for all these years since that occurred, have been paying off annually some of that obligation from the bad thing that happened all those years ago. A very high rate, not so good loan that was forced because they defaulted at the time. Luckily, the city is at a point now, because of good management, change in administration, where they have cash on hand. And so the policy question, which is really up to the city council and the mayor, is do you want to use some of that cash to once and for all get rid of that bad loan that came out of that, and then clean up the fine? They obviously when you pay it off, it costs you cash, but it gets rid of what was really not a very good loan. But it was necessary at the time to stabilize the finances of the city. So now I'll turn it over to Marita, who is the director of finance for the city, as well as a member of this board. And she could talk a little bit about the advantage of paying off the AMBAC once and for all, the AMBAC loan, which hasn't been approved yet, but is a proposal that's
Right,
out.
that's fine. I guess my point is, it should not be
She'll explain why it's so important, at least from her point of view.
And then I also want to just also say that we'll answer this in writing. This
Sure.
is not a discussion
Okay.
to address each of these, because
No, we're not gonna go through these.
No.
Yeah.
because I did just look through, so I'd like to,
No, that,
Keep them
I'll
going.
comment briefly.
okay.
Very-
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
So your question is related to the impact debt?
Well, my question is just why, I guess there seem to be two plans, and I guess I was shocked that the first one was even talking about just pay it all down immediately because of the history and because of the interest rates, and because you want a $15 million loan, you don't have a credit rating, and you have high interest rates, they're probably gonna go higher. I guess I was just surprised why there's any other, because it seemed like you asked to get approved by the city. I thought you guys could almost force the city at this point to pay it all down right now. Can you not?
We are this, I am the city.
Yeah, so,
Oh, okay.
So she works for
so
the-
sorry,
I'm the
so,
city's finance.
yeah,
Oh,
Marita's,
Traded last
yeah, right, that's a good way.
That's true, I did change my role. I was the Act 47 coordinator this time last year, so I understand your confusion.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then I guess my only other question other than that is just capital improvements for 2022. Were I think $8 or $9 million higher than all the other years. Do you guys need like really good contracts? You just want to load up on like a lot of capital improvements?
No, it's just deferred capital improvement because we don't have any means in which to purchase except pay it as you go. So we have all these deferrals. And so those deferrals have caused us
Okay.
to
All right,
have,
okay.
more significant capital needs because, for instance, we just had to replace a HVAC system, which 3.5 years ago would have cost us $1 million, cost us 5.5 million. And we had to do it because the police commissioner wasn't thrilled about sitting there in 97 degrees weather in his office. So there's, things like that when you defer improvements, things like that can happen. But getting back to your question on let me answer I think you have two separate questions. Why are we not moving forward immediately with the AMVAC payment? Is that your first question? Am I correct in understanding?
Yeah, because, yes, like the full payment, because I think it's we're in a very weird circumstances, COVID, money that came in, sort of situation. I don't know if this is going to be sustainable for 5 years, considering what got us to this place in the first place. Yeah, so I guess, if you're going to pay it down immediately, either way, maybe it doesn't matter, but.
Well, obviously I can't make that decision by myself, but the goal of this mayor, the controller, this mayor, this council, we hope, because we haven't taken that fully before them, the controller and the treasurer, their goal would be to pay the entire 20 million AMVAC loan off this year. Assuming, as I said, there's like an 85% chance of that happening by December 31st, because we do have the most recent report that was submitted to DCD on August 15th that said we had $40 million in the general fund in cash, plus the Commonwealth, loving us so much, gave us an additional $5 million for our police and fire service. So now we have approximately $45 million in the general fund balance as cash. So obviously, if you have 45 million, and you subtract 20, then we're down to, so I'm not being smart, I'm really not. You have 25 million, which is still a reasonably healthy fund balance for this city.
Right, it's not under 5%.
Right, it's well above that, and that's what's required right now by city council. So it is above that. And if you look, by virtue of paying, let me just go to that sheet real quick. By virtue of paying, by virtue of paying the AMVAC off, assuming we do, our expenses in 2023 were 56 million versus 81 million. And 2024, our expenses were 58 million. So you can see our expenses are dropped so significantly because both bonds are paid off, gone. And they wouldn't be so significant if we had to continue to pay those bonds. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact amount of them. It's probably embedded in here, but I don't have them memorized. So in essence, that allows us to robustly end up with a fund balance in 2026 of $45 million. So, and even with our expenses climbing to 62, because we're spending less than we're bringing in, which has never happened in this city before, not for 30 years. So that's really, and it's not anyone's fault. I'm not blaming anybody in the past. We we're lucky to be in the right place at the right time, and the timing is good, right? So we're fortunate to be in that circumstances. You can judge however you want the past, because the retrospectoscope is always 2020. But the thing is, I think we're in a good place, both by good fortune and by good judgment and by good management of our mayor that has put us in and will put us in that place. Now, as for the 15 million borrowing, our accounting manager and our deputy controller came up with that number based on that list in the back that says these are all the items that we desperately need. So we're going to get them one way or another. If we have to pay out of cash, we'll have to get at least most of it, But it would be nice if we could borrow it and manage it and pay slowly over time, as long as it's well managed. We're not just, haphazardly saying, let's do this and not have a good plan. We think we have a good plan. And we have a conservative plan and a reasonable plan. Because he's a borough manager in a major borough chambers. He cannot survive with his 5 utilities without some capital investment. I'm in the same boat. I don't have as many utilities as he does, but But you can't survive in a major city with major infrastructure without improvements. Yeah, so,
Thanks,
and we
Mike.
did, and we did improve 7th Street and 2nd Street, although not everybody's thrilled with 2nd Street, but, you know, so and 3rd Street, so, and State Street. So we do see some real positive things happening that have already occurred from a capital standpoint with us doing pay as you go.
Thanks for your questions, right? Eric, you had a.
So just an observation, I think, a couple observations. First of all, I mean, it's difficult for people to comprehend the full narrative of the city of Harrisburg because people have the attention span of a fruit fly. And so, you know, I don't know how you battle that, frankly. And, you know, where you were to where you're not, it is important, but people more or less are fixated on real time. Brian's an actuary and finance guy, and he was with me. We introduced 3 no tax increase budgets for Central Office. 9th largest
Thank
school
you.
district, yeah. We lost all 3 votes to a majority of Republicans. It's a strange world. That being said, it gives us the idea, you know, we're going through a lot of record keeping, and part of the questions we asked, and they're right now with the city, is just based on negative experiences we've had. That I just a couple of things that I share with you that may be obvious to you. But when you're talking about pilot programs, you know, this was difficult, and I know you've already renegotiated with the hospital. The biggest one out there, and I don't know if it's sitting there for the city, is Norfolk Southern, which is, I just
Don't
want
hold your breath on Norfolk Southern.
well, they're railroad companies, so they're the Antichrist. But at that point, you got to go out and harm. And what I'm saying is that as a taxpayer, I'm not a taxpayer city, this may be one, there's coordinated litigation going on this way, Irish Central Office School District. I'm just saying, and if you're prioritizing tax pilot programs, that's the big one. And everybody says the same thing, oh, with this or that. So what? You know, everybody has a plan to get punched in the face.
No, I know, I was just joking.
Great. The other thing I'd point out is I'm not a fan, even though I come from the industry of ESCOs. It looks like you had a little one on the guaranteed energy savings contract, so I'm not picking on you. But what I've noticed in that world is a lot of times they're ephemeral and the savings aren't real. And I'm just pointing that out. I'm sure you've had experiences, I'm not saying they're bad or negative, but we had a 4.2 million experience at West Hanover Elementary School, and then we demolished the school. And we had 19 buildings in Central Office School District. Some of the housing stock is old. So I guess what I'm saying is there's a context before you change out, you may need to rebuild. And that's not an easy thing to do. The other 2 things that I just noticed real quickly, and again, I don't know if you know, we've saved a lot of money doing carve outs. I don't know if you do that at the city, but we were able to save a lot of money with the carve out rather than the carve in, where we got a professional benefits manager to manage our pharmaceuticals. So if you're interested, Brian worked on that with me, and it was interesting. We basically got a company to negotiate itself against 4 other health providers. There's money there, and you do not have to give up any quality. It's kind of interesting how that, and again, I give Brian a lot of credit for that. The other thing that I guess that I would announce, and I said it the other week when the young woman in here was the economic impact,
Right.
is that, you know, if you're looking at the RACP money, and I know that's not necessarily something the city does, you didn't get 8 million in 1 grant. You have 8 different economic initiatives, and I'm not trying to be nasty, but just wondering if there's some kind of coordinated effort with downtown Harrisburg, you know, this, that, the other thing. And again, that just comes back to bad experiences being short-sighted and probably not having a better game plan. But I just want to compliment you all, because if you hadn't been to meetings in the prior years, with the prior administrations, it would be difficult to observe what a gigantic thawing is taking place. And I don't care who I offend, so I'm happy to say that. And I'm happy to be pointed about that. So, you know, Marie to the city was a breath of fresh air, and thanks for staying the course. Because for some of these meetings, it felt like I was in a dental chair. Honest to God. it was
And I'm a
like,
dental folk, so do not talk more about that.
you can't mandate or legislate cooperation, but you can save yourself so much wasted time and energy. Just answer the question and work together. So that's just a compliment to all of you. It's really been amazing seeing the genesis that's occurred.
Thank you very much, Eric. We appreciate your comments, and I'll follow up with you.
Take your time. We got T-shirts next.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Burkett.
You made a comment about the GESA loan.
Mhm.
Jeffrey, do you know if it's on our website? It was last year under the old administration. We asked them for cost benefit analysis, and they did provide one. And normally we post that on our website.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would think it is, but I'm not exactly sure where it is. Again, I'd have to do some looking back.
It's anyway.
And I'm
it's
sure
after
the city
budget.
would be able to get that. I'm sure Brian has it.
I don't think Brian prepared it. I think it was
Oh,
Mark Woolley.
oh, you think him at Mark's office?
Yeah, but
Mark,
he-
he prepared some sort of, he prepared a report, Mark Woolley. I think it was Mark.
I'll look for it.
He submitted it.
I'll look for it. If
I
it-
wouldn't mind seeing it if I can't get it up my fingers.
Yeah, okay, so we'll try
I
to,
think we discussed it here.
I know we did, and I'll try to find it.
So the guess, it's not a lot of money spent on the ESCO. And if you're talking about capital and infrastructure, you're talking about doing this, there's money to be made. I mean, we built a net zero building in Shanksville, which I'm not asking you to do, but I don't know that that's a hallmark of the city just based on the history. And certainly, PPL Act 129 is underutilized. There, I'm on the stakeholder meeting, that is underutilized. There's funding there. And again, I can't tell you what to do. It's a distribution company, not a generating company, but there's PUC mandated value. And that program is going to go on indefinitely.
Good to know.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate your comments. Do our guests from the state have any comments they'd like to give us today? Okay, well, thank you so much as always for your
coming,
attendance. We really appreciate you being here. And I'll turn it back to the chair.
And I, not having anything else on the agenda, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. So moved. I don't need a second,
You don't.
so let's go.
5:03 PM, and we'll see you next month.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Mark. for your
Thanks, Brian.
attendance.